Consent agenda items are approved by one motion. Council members or member of the public may pull consent items to be considered separately at a time determined by the mayor. Is there anything to be pulled?
Move for approval of items 7 through 13.
We have a motion by Mr. Jackson and a second by Ms. Walker. Please vote.
Motion carried.
Under public hearing, we have a public hearing for the purpose of considering zoning ordinance text amendment number 1303. The project proposes adding an unlisted use to the commercial zone use regulations table 29.61.1D entitled Tobacco Retail Shop under Chapter 29 of the Code of the City of El Centro. Norma Villa-Conrad.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. The project before you is a request by Mr. and Mrs. Rodriguez to add the unlisted use of tobacco retail shops to the commercial zones use regulations. The proposal is to add a definition to our current code under T definitions, basically which would call for a tobacco retail shop would be defined as a business whose main purpose is the sale of tobacco products. Tobacco retail shops may include private smokers' lounges in accordance with the California Labor Code Section 6404.5. Under the California Smoke-Free Workplace Act, there are certain exceptions to the law, and those exceptions apply to a tobacco retail shop. Basically, the exception does not apply to a business that is operated solely, the exception is applicable to any business that's operated solely by the owner and has no employees. Also, if you're a small business with 5 or fewer employees, and you must meet certain criteria, such as employees have to permit consent to smoking, you have to comply with ventilation standards, and the area must not be accessible to minors. The proposed use would be added under the commercial section of the code, and it would be permitted under the CT, tourist commercial, downtown commercial, general commercial, and heavy commercial zones. In regards to the environmental review, this project is exempt from CEQA. In the public, we do have the applicants, Mr. and Mrs. Rodriguez, who are here to answer any questions regarding the proposed business application. And this concludes my report.
Anything from the council?
I don't think there's any questions. It seems like a kind of a modification that makes sense. So I would move approval of
Public hearing.
public hearing.
Is there anyone from the public that would like to address this? Seeing none, comes back to the council.
So Norma, without the specific provision of this retail use in the ordinance, it doesn't fall under a bigger umbrella of just retail operation?
That's correct. It was very vague. Currently, what we have in our current ordinance is just retail sales, and we would apply that to any kind of retail. However, this being a tobacco retail sales with the possibility of having a smoker's lounge, we thought that would be, we would keep that separate than the typical retail sales.
I don't recall reading in the ordinance in your report, Norma, if it talks about size limitations of the lounge?
There is no size limitation, however, it has to be an accessory use, so it cannot be the main use. And we do have a definition for accessory use in our code, which basically says that the use has to be, excuse me, let me just, the accessory use does not alter the principal use of the subject lot, and it has to be related and clearly a subordinate to the main use. So it cannot be the main use. It's an accessory use. So that's the definition that we have.
And there's certain restrictions, provisions, waivers, exceptions in the state law that would allow. I think you said that if, as long as there's no employees, or if there's 5 or less, they have to comply with certain ventilation standards.
That's correct.
Who is responsible for watching that, for monitoring of the adherence of those provisions?
Well, through the business license, when a business license is issued to the business, that would be one of the requirements that would be placed upon the business. Now, if we start having problems where we get maybe complaints or hearing that minors are going in there, or, of course.
Or that they have employees?
Or that they have employees, then we would look into further under code enforcement, or maybe ask the police department to help us out, do some enforcement.
They can have employees.
And I think on your report you do mention that this is currently allowed by the City of Brawley, correct?
That's correct. The
City of Imperial as
The
well?
City of Imperial allows it. That I know of, they don't have one, but they do allow it with a conditional use permit.
Oh, with the CUP.
Mhm.
Okay. What's the rationale for making this an outright permitted use as opposed to going through a conditional use permit process?
Again, we want to treat it the same as any kind of retail sales, because again, the main use has to be retail sales of, in this case, it would be tobacco products. The difference, and maybe the applicant can explain it a little bit more, the difference between selling tobacco at a tobacco retail shop and selling it like at a 7-Eleven or at a convenience store is that if it's a tobacco retail shop, they can have the tobacco accessible to the public, to the clients. Whereas with the convenience store, those products have to be behind the counter or in a secure place.
Yeah. I'm not a smoker, never has been, but I would presume that the smoking lounge would be used by people smoking cigars, perhaps, or not
That's
regular, not
the
regular
intent
cigarettes.
is to be able to smoke the products that they sell, which would be cigars, cigarettes, and maybe the applicant could
Yeah,
expand a little bit
can you
more on
expand
that.
on
Daniel Rodriguez, 1041 Meadowview in El Centro. The difference between tobacco retail store and just any other type of store that sells tobacco is that my shops have humidors. So humidors are accessible to clients who can walk in, open their humidors themselves, and pick out their own cigars that they want to purchase. Whereas a 7-Eleven or Walmart or anybody else, everything has to be behind the counter and ask for and then the employee has to get the product and then give it to the client. That's basically the only two. And then tobacco retail store makes the establishment an 18 and over only, whereas an 8 p.m. anybody can go in there and walk around the store.
And I think there's a prohibition of against selling liquor, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. Fine.
If I may, Ms. Viacana, there's also conditional use permit also triggers a portion of the sequel.
Yes, we would have to do an
Right.
environmental initial study.
So we're also very careful, since the last zoning change, of what we put into conditional use permits, because inadvertently, we were driving up the cost of small businesses. So what we now have is we have site plan reviews that don't trigger the CEQA process.
Anyone else?
You want to make a motion?
Well, now we can close the public hearing.
Yeah.
Okay. And we'll close the public hearing.
Now move for approval of ordinance number 13-19. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of El Centro amending Chapter 29 of the Code of the City of El Centro by amending Sections 29-35 of Division 2, Article 1, entitled Definitions, and by amending subsection D to Table 29-69.1 of Section 29-61, Division 3, Article 2, entitled Commercial Zones, Use Regulations, waive reading and pass as a first reading.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Walker, a second by Mr. Jackson. Please vote.
Motion carried, 4-0.
We now have final action, a public hearing for the purpose of considering zoning ordinance text amendment number 13-05, the project proposed zoning ordinance text amendments to Chapter 29 of the Code of the City of El Centro relating to housing in order to bring said code into conformance with state housing law. Norma Villacani.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. The project before you is being brought to you as you are aware, we are working on updating our housing element, which we're hoping to get certified by this state by October 15th. While we were in the process of doing our review of our current housing element, the consultant brought up to our attention that there are several items that needed to be revised in order to comply with housing element law. So these text amendments are just provisions, compliance with state housing laws. To start out with, we are recommending adding and amending definitions for the following: agricultural uses, farm employee housing, residential care facilities, single-room occupancy buildings, supportive housing, and transitional housing. In regards to transitional housing, state law basically says that transitional housing must be allowed in residential zones. So what we're doing is any housing operated, we're defining transitional housing as any housing operated under certain program requirements that call for the termination of assistance and recirculation of the assisted unit to another eligible program recipient, and the assistance shall be no less than 6 months. In other words, it's a transitional assistance. And we're adding the definition and adding the use to our code. In regards to farm employee housing, HCD considers the exclusion of farm employee housing as a housing constraint. Therefore, we are adding the definition of farm employee housing, which would be incidental to any agricultural uses in the rural residential area. And those would be housing for up to 6 residents only. In regards to residential care facilities and transitional housing, state law requires that both of these housing units be subject to the same development standards and permit requirements as other types of housing in the same zone. In that regards, we are adding the use to the downtown commercial and tourist commercial zone. And then finally, under SRO, single room occupancy, Right now, our zoning ordinance does not have explicit provisions for SROs. So we're adding the definition of an SRO, and we're also allowing SROs within the downtown and tourist commercial areas. The reason being is that state law requires that jurisdictions identify housing types that are suitable for the very extremely low income households. And the state sees SROs as these types of housing units. Okay. Under the environmental review, the project is exempt from CEQA. With this, we are recommending that you open the public hearing and approve the proposed text amendment to our Chapter 29 of the zoning code. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, Norma?
State requirements, correct?
State requirements, basically.
Yeah. You know, I was really surprised when you have in here farm worker housing. I remember that when I was a kid, but I don't remember seeing anything like that around here now.
You don't see that anymore. Well, not in this area. Maybe like in Central California, you would see that. But we're still adding it on. We need to have that accessible to our residents.
Some of the coastal areas like Salinas and Ventura County and those areas
Yes.
where agriculture is still big, they need type of
That's
housing.
that labor intensive, like citrus.
Yes.
I'll move for approval of ordinance.
It's a public hearing, sorry.
I'm going to close the public hearing, bring it back to the council. Mr. Silva?
Mr. Mayor, I move for approval of ordinance 1320, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of El Centro amending Chapter 29 of the Code of the City of El Centro by amending Division 2, Article 1, entitled Definitions, subsection A, B, C, and D of Table 29, 53.1 of Section 29-53, Division 2, Article 2, entitled Residential Zones Use Regulations, subsection G of the Table 29-61-1 of Section 29-61, Division 3, Article 2, entitled Commercial Zones Use Regulations, and by amending subsection 6 to Section 29-162, Division 9, Article 3, entitled Accessory Use Regulations. Do you want me to repeat that, anybody?
Yeah, can you start over? I lost you halfway through.
Real fast.
Waive reading and pass as first reading.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Silva and second by Ms. Walker. Please vote.
Motion carried, 4-0.
Under new business, we discuss and any necessary action regarding approval a $20,000 loan to Marsco, a tenant at the city business incubator facility under the city projected jobs program. Marcelo Piedra.
Yes, good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the council. Very pleased to present to you this request for approval consideration of a $20,000 loan to Morsco. We do happen to have our business owner here, Mr. Ernest Morse, sitting in the audience. He has been operating his business, and I have to tell you that this is the type of business that we want to see go into our incubator facility. Mr. Morse actually started his business from his home, realized that he was expanding and needed additional work area for his business, and decided to join our business incubator facility this January. More importantly is the fact that he is truly qualifies and meet the requirements of our project's jobs program, which, as you may recall, is actually a program that the city was able to create through funding that we received from the local entity mitigation grant program. So we're very excited that he's in our incubator facility, and very pleased that he was able to apply and be qualified for this $20,000 loan. And in essence, the loan will be used for the purchase of equipment and working capital. It has been reviewed by our loan underwriter and also by the loan review committee. but you being the final authority for approval, we are required to present this loan to you for consideration. Again, the loan satisfies the requirements of the program guidelines. There is job creation, there's the retention of 1 job, and also the creation of 2 part-time positions that are anticipated with this business. And if there's any questions, I can answer those. Mr. Morse would also like to make some comments, so we're here to answer any questions.
Yes, thank you. Tell me more about the expectation for job retention and job creation. Is the 20,000 loan with the expectation of 1 full-time job, is that a city requirement, or is that IID requirement, or how did that come about?
Basically, it's a program guideline that the city staff put together when we put together our guidelines. There is job creation requirement that the program requires for the IID local entity, but they give the flexibility to the city to determine the number of jobs that you would anticipate creating. And in this particular case, we did $20,000 per full-time job created.
So how many employees are there right now?
I believe he currently has one employee.
One full-time or part-time? Part-time. So this is going to require the addition of 1 additional or 2 additional?
One full-time employment. If he provides 2 part-time jobs, then that's the equivalent of a full-time employee.
Is there any stipulation as far as wages? So
there's no requirement as
or
to what
benefits?
particular salary or benefits. That's not something that the program requires, but we do require the 1 job creation.
I'll just say it's good to see that, you know, the incubator is being used, and it looks like Mr. Morris is a good candidate for this, and so I would support it. And if there's no other comments, oh, go ahead.
Hello, Ernest Morse, 2617 Sandalwood Drive, El Centro. And I just wanted to thank you, Mayor and City Council, for giving me this opportunity to provide jobs and hopefully more in the future and be able to stimulate our local economy.
Thank you.
I'll move for approval of item number 16.
Okay, approval of $20,000 loan to Marsco to
Second.
purchase equipment and provide working capital for the business located at Suite 2 in the City Business Industrial Incubator Facility.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Jackson, a second by Mrs. Silva. Please vote.
Thank you.
Motion carried 4-0.
We have discussion and any necessary action regarding the appointment of 2 members of the Community Service Commission with terms ending in May 6, 2017. I had a chance to talk to a total of 3 people, and the 2 that are there serving right now are doing a good job, and everyone seems to be working together quite well. So I'm going to keep Cheyenne Marie Gaddis and Peter Rodriguez.
I move the mayor's recommendations.
Second.
I have a motion by the mayor, second by Mr. Jackson. Please vote.
Motion carried 4-0.
We have discussion and any necessary action regarding the appointment of 2 El Centro Council members to serve as representative and alternate on the LAPCO. Cheryl Walker, Cheryl Vegas Walker.
As council will recall, this was an appointment that's made by the select committee made up of the mayors or their representatives during the quarterly League of California City meetings. There's been a vacancy created on LAFCO. It was at this meeting that there was a determination made that the vacancy on LAFCO would be filled by a representative from the city of El Centro. So I asked that we could bring this forward today, select that member and an alternate in the event that our primary member was not able to attend. So I would like to see us appoint as a representative Mr. Jackson and as an alternate.
I would take the alternate.
And as an alternate, Mr. Silva. So that's my motion to appoint and ask that the city clerk forward those names to the county.
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Walker, a second by Mr. Silva. Please vote.
Motion carried 4-0.
Discussion and any necessary direction regarding the presentation of the annual budget general fund review. Leticia Salcido.
Okay. Let me wake up. Good evening, Mayor and council members. Welcome once again to our budget presentation. This presentation is for the review of the general fund budget for fiscal year 2014. This is a workshop. The budget being presented today is a preliminary budget. I will be incorporating council's feedback and direction and presenting a revised budget at a follow-up workshop. Our goal is to have the city manager's budget for the meeting of June the 4th, the council meeting of June the 4th. Our goal tonight is to discuss and go over the general fund revenues, expenditures, fund balance, as well as the reserves and designations within fund balance, capital outlay, personnel requests, and challenges both in the preparation of this budget as well as future projects. We'll start with revenue projections. With regards to revenue projections for fiscal year 2014, we are projecting $28.1 million in revenues. This level is above previous years for the reason that we have a one-time $4 million expenditure next year that we allocated funds for. And we'll talk about it later on during the expenditure portion of this presentation. We'll start with the three major revenue sources for the general fund, and those being sales tax, motor vehicle license fees, and property taxes. For next year, we're projecting sales tax in totaling $10.7 million, which is $200,000 above the budget level for this year, only a 1% increase, 1.9% increase. It should be noted that the sales tax revenues for the past 3 years have averaged anywhere from 10.5 to 10.6 million. So at 10.7, I think we're okay for projections. With regards to motor vehicle license fee, we're projecting $3.7 million. That shows a decline of $285,000, and mainly being from the state cutting back on this revenue source and reallocating some of those funds to law enforcement activities such as cops. So we're projecting only $3,650,000 for next year. With regards to property taxes, $2.9 million, pretty much at the same level as in the previous 3 years. It's maintained steady at this level. With regards to the TOT, we're budgeting $1.5 million. TOT has been improving over the past 2 years, so we're budgeting $160,000 over the level for this year. That's an 11% increase. Other taxes, which include business licenses, franchise for cable and gas, we're budgeting $739,000. Building fees, building-related fees, only $375,000, which is a decline of $103,000. A review of projects in the next year doesn't show, we don't see any major projects coming on board for next year, so therefore the low level of building fees. I would like to note that this revenue source in the past, prior to our recession, was $1.2 million and has been constantly declining ever since. So at $375,000, very low level. For service charges, those are fees for recreations, library, police and fire at $377,000. Grants and agencies at $1.2 million reflects an increase. However, part of that is due to grants. Another part is due to the successor agency redistribution monies coming back to the city from that. And then we have fines, transfers in, and others. We're projecting $6.6 million. This line item includes, for example, parking, court, vehicle fines. It includes transfers in from gas tax for street-related activities. And the major one is the $4 million that we are one-time revenue that will be coming in to cover the expenditure for the Crookshank landfill cleanup for next year. So in total, we have $28.1 million allocated for next year, an increase of 18%. However, 4.2 million of that is one time.
Letty, can
Yes.
you please go over again the rationale for reducing the motor vehicle license?
Yes, the motor vehicle license fee, we normally received in an average $3.9 million. However, that declined as a result of the state took a portion of that and reallocated it to COPS grant, from what I understand. So law enforcement grants. So that was taken and then reallocated towards that other.
Okay.
And it's not that the COPS grants are going up, they just reduce the general fund allocation to the COPS grant. So you're, in effect, you're paying for your own COPS grant.
Ms. Salcido, the grants and agency,
Yes.
can you comment, are those multi-year grants or is that a one-time funding?
One-time funding, yes.
Okay, so
For example, within this category is the $102,000, I believe, for paving of the Sunflower parking lot.
Okay,
Okay, so one time.
one-time funding there. Okay, thank you.
With regards to revenues, let me go over. Revenue sources have declined ever since the major recession. Pre-recession levels were $27.1 million. Then the recession hit and we had that major decline in revenues in 2010. Total amount of that decline was $4.2 million. We had recovered some revenues during 2012. However, for fiscal year 2004, we're projecting $23.9 million, which is still 3.2 million below the level that we were at the pre-recession. Overall, we have recuperated 940,000 of the 4.1 million that we lost, but that's only 22% of the amount of revenues that we lost. So we're still operating with that smaller amount of revenues, and therefore the lower amount of allocations for all those divisions within the city. With regards to expenditures, for expenditures, of course, we have a balanced budget, and expenditures total the $28.1 million again. Our budget this year was 24, so we're about $4 million, $4.5 million over the current level. Individually, for each division, we have allocated $2.4 million for general government. That's council, clerk, city manager, human resources, finance, city attorney. Just a slight decline of 5%. We have police at $8.9 million with an increase of $235,000. Fire at $6.1 million, an increase of $364,000. However, most of that is capital, as we're allocating $350,000 for capital for the fire division. For public works, which is administration and streets, and in this case, we're also adding Crookshank, we're allocating $5.3 million, which is an increase of almost $4 million, which is exactly the amount that we're allocating for the Crookshank cleanup. Then for engineering, $375,000, pretty much at the same level. For the building department and the planning department, building will, there's an increase of $59,000. However, with the reallocation of the duties between the building and the planning, now building will we're allocating half of the salaries for the director to building and then half of them for planning. So there's an increase in building and a decline in planning. However, planning shows a smaller amount here because we're allocating $50,000 to update the service area plan next year.
Ms. Salcido, the change in general government, is that tied to the city attorney's office, or?
The change is, it's a combination, yes, that's one of the reasons. And then we also have a higher cost allocation to the enterprise funds.
Okay.
And so that affects that category as well.
Letty, on the expenditure, the $4 million in public works, that's Crookshank cleanup, correct? And you show that on the revenue side under fines, transfers, and other. But can you tell me specifically where we're transferring that money from to be able to come up with the funds?
Yes. As you know, it is our policy to set aside funds for potential liabilities, that we have in the future. And we had done such a thing for one of our liabilities, which had set aside a certain amount of money for that liability. When this came up, we have since then funded 75% of that other liability in a trust, and we took some of those funds to be able to cover this one-time expenditure in the general fund.
Okay.
So we just shifted. We have this liability. We set aside money for that. Now we have this other expenditure. We're transferring some of those monies to cover that expenditure now because that's an immediate need.
What percentage of that liability that we had previously funded does that reduce us to?
It's 75%, and actually we set aside 75% of that for that liability in a trust, and that trust is doing so well. In the first quarter, we earned $116,000, I believe. So which it helps to lower more so or improve our ratio. So it was 75, and now we have $116,000 more.
Well, I think that's great. I know when we first were appraised of the issue with Crookshank and our requirement to clean that up, we were wondering where the money was going to come from, and I'm glad you found it.
Yeah, now we know.
And actually, in addition to that, because it should be noted that this expenditure is estimated to be anywhere from $4 to $6 million. We have allocated $4 million in next year's budget, but we have also designated as a contingency within the fund balance an additional $1 million for should the expenditure be more than what we have allocated in the budget for next year.
You'll be seeing, or in the subject council, you'll be seeing a memorandum of understanding coming from the county and the city. The state wants the city and county to work together. County will be lead agency, and there's also a grant that we're working through for about $750,000 to help offset some of that. And allocation is going to be based on tonnage. So whoever has the most trash is how this deal works. But quite frankly, the land mass, we cover about 70% of the land. So it's probably the most equitable way to do it is based on tonnage hauled out. At the end, we will have a closed site with no permit requirements, and we'll just fence it.
Okay. Continuing with operating expenditures, we have allocated for park maintenance $1.3 million, an increase of $76,000. However, it should be noted, all in capital. However, it should be noted that we're allocating $350,000 for park maintenance, and capital being $200,000 to complete the Swarthout Phase 1 renovations. And then we're also including in this category the paving of the Sunflower Park and $45,000 for electrical panels of various parks. Recreation, $1.1 million. That shows a decline. However, in this category, in this year, we had allocated some capital one time that's not reflected in next year's budget anymore. Library, $647,000 shows an increase, and the reason for that is that we're funding the library activities now 100% by the general fund, whereas in the past we used to have impact fees, we used to have a library assistant, a grant from the state. We don't have those revenue sources anymore. Impact fees has been exhausted, and the grant from the state, we no longer, they no longer offer that to us. So therefore, the increase in expenditures for the library. For economic development, $371,000, a decline mainly due to reallocation, the allocation of salaries to other grants and other activities, relieving the general fund from those expenditures. And then finally, we're able to include within this budget $600,000 required for that liability, for OPEB liability, other post-employment benefit liability, $600,000 required per year. So overall, $28 million in this budget, an increase of 4.5, and again, mainly due to Crookshank expenditures. Now, fund balance. With regards to fund balance, we have reserves and designations. We have a balanced budget in that revenues equal our operating expenditures of $28.1 million. Leaving us with a projected ending fund balance of $9.1 million at the end of the year. Those $9.1 million we have designated per our own city policy, financial policy, we have designated for various potential liabilities. Per our policy, we require that we maintain at least a 10% for economic unknowns, and that's the 10% of our expenditures, so that's $2.8 million. We have also designated for vehicle and major equipment replacement, not including buildings, just vehicle and major equipment, $2.5 million. And here's the next designation, $1 million for Crookshank contingency. So $4 million in the budget, $1 million out of reserves should there be a need for additional funds. For the accrued leave liability, we have allocated $1 million. Going back to vehicle and major equipment of 2.5, it should be noted that our accumulated depreciation for vehicle and major equipment is $14 million. So our goal in this category is to have enough funds to be able to replace that capital that has almost fully depreciated. Building replacement, as you know, we have goals and needs for a new police station, a new building. There's the hope that we will build a new building for the library, a permanent building for the library. So with that in mind, we have started allocating funds toward those goals. And then finally, $302,000 revenue stabilization. Should our revenues come short of what we're projecting, we have this little bit to make up, to assist us in balancing our budget.
Ms. Salcido, I know that we will get to this in a later slide, but we've read a number of news stories with regard to CalPERS increases and when those are triggered. Is there a reason why we're not looking to start to reserve for those increased liabilities now as opposed to waiting the next year?
We are aware of the increases in CalPERS, and as a matter of fact, we have been aware for the, let's see, actually when I first started, we did a study to determine, to try to figure out what what the trend was. And then back at the end of beginning of 2011, I believe, we did another study to review and determine what our future liability was going to be. And I do have another slide later on. And based on this, I've made a couple of presentations to staff and to employees showing what those increases were, and they're very severe, and we have been aware of that. So while CalPERS is barely coming out, and I received a letter yesterday, coming out with their notice, we're increasing rates, we have been aware of this for the past few years. and we have been preparing, and that's part of the challenges that we have to evaluate and determine what our goals are going to be with regards to that. But yes, we have been controlling expenditures because we know that that's coming up ahead in the future. And as a matter of fact, CalPERS cost increased $350,000 just this year, general fund only.
So, for example, if we are fortunate and Crookshank, the cleanup there is less than anticipated and we don't need that contingency, can we transition that contingency to, for example, the meeting our CalPERS obligation?
Absolutely, we can do that, yes. And things shift. I mean, that would have been our presentation today, except that we have the Crookshank need for next year.
Thank you.
Letty, a question on the building replacement, the 1.5 million. And I'm not sure if I just have some duplication, but do we already have existing money in that building fund of like 1.2 million?
In the current year budget, you mean?
Correct.
Okay, yes, we have projected a certain amount of money at the end of the year, and are pretty much close to the $9 million, and we had allocated that money. So in other words, at the end of the year, we say we're going to end the year with $9 million. Out of those $9 million, I am designating the certain amount of money for this potential liability should we need some equipment. And that changes every year. So at the end of next year, we're projecting $9 million, and at that point, we're saying out of the $9 million, we're setting aside 2.5 for purchase of equipment and vehicles.
No, I guess my question was: do we have a set aside from fiscal year 11-12 that was part of a building replacement fund?
No, it's not like we're adding on to that amount of money that we set aside in previous years. We're just saying at the end of the year, we have the savings account and it's $9 million, and out of those 9, we're holding 2.5 for purchases of equipment should there be a need.
So in
But
other
it's
words,
not in addition, this is it.
in other words, items that show up there that do not get spent in that particular year will show up on your beginning fund balance, correct?
Yes, we come in
Yes.
at the 9 million.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
And I don't want to get too far ahead of Mr. Aceto, but what we're not reflecting in here, or we're only reflecting in here, are revenues that we believe we have access to. And for example, the proceeds from the 2011 RDA proceeds from bonds A and B, and that's very technical for the public to hear, we're not counting that revenue until we get past lawsuit, the Department of Finance, or AB 981, which could change the whole picture and give us those funds. And those are several $1 million a year flowing in. And that's a discussion for the council to do, how to allocate that. Those revenues will come to the general fund. But what we want to do is we're not going to count those until we know we have it. And so what you're only seeing is revenues we're assured we're going to be getting as best as we can. So that's why you sometimes wonder, where are these others and why aren't flowing to like the building funds? It's because we haven't been able to, we can't lock that down until it's over.
But to follow up with that, and just for clarification, because I need to understand this, is we don't have a carryover from years past of a set aside already in a building replacement fund already there.
You do. Your old balance was 1.2 million, I believe, for building.
Yeah, that was my question. I thought.
Right. So this will go up to. This is going up by 300,000.
So okay, so we're not increasing it by 1.5 million. We're increasing it by 300,000.
The old building fund was what? Was it 1 million? In last year's fund, I believe there was a 1 million in the 2011-12.
I want to say it was.
I thought it was like 1.2.
I tried to stay with pretty close
Right.
to the same
Yeah.
amount.
Right.
We have all the other designations, but within the budget, we have a breakdown of our projected ending fund balance for that year, and let me see. Here we go. 2.2. 2.2. So this year we're allocating out of that ending amount of money $2.5 million, but it's not in addition to the 2.2.
Yes. I think
So
you're
it's not-
looking at the vehicle.
Yeah,
the
I'm talking
major.
about the building fund.
Building fund.
replacement.
Oh,
The
it
1.5
it was
million.
the same amount.
Was it 1.5?
Okay.
Okay.
So I
then-
guess my question is, it's not cumulative. We're not
No.
adding 1.5 to the 1.2 to
No.
have 2.7.
No.
That's correct.
We're basically getting $28 million in money that's coming in, and 28 is going out, but we still have a leftover amount of 9
Okay.
million. But that's allocated in those designations.
All right, thank
Nothing else. Okay. With regards to capital, we had a request for capital totaling $16 million. We have a lot of different maintenance. The capital requests were reviewed with each director, with each division representative to determine the priority within that department. And then we sat down and we reviewed all of the requests to determine what the priority was for the city as a whole. We reviewed those needs to determine if the need was as a result of as a safety issue, a legal issue, or to improve customer service. You'll be shocked. So we're recommending for general fund activities $14.2 million.
Wow.
However, only $4 million, 4.8, is from the general fund. We're out of all of the requests were due to a safety need or some extraordinary item issue. We are paying for $79,000 out of this year's budget. Out of the 14 million, 9.3 million is coming from other sources. Other sources being impact fees, asset forfeiture, the 07 bonds, entitlement, program income, grants, LTA, Federal Highway Administration, and 25,000 donation from Rabobank. So it's for general fund activities, and we're budgeting $14.2 million. Let me see. It includes replacing equipment, software, computers, radios, and so on. For example, for the city clerk, a computer and scanner, HR, computers, for IT network, servers, and softwares to continue to update our IT infrastructure, radios for facility maintenance. For the fire department, we're allocating $150,000 for a breathing apparatus, and that's to replace and update to comply with new requirements. Now, for the fire engine, we're allocating $200,000, which is half of the payment for a fire engine. Because when you order a fire engine, it normally takes about a couple of years. We can budget for half of it next year, and then the following year we'll budget the additional payment for payoff. And then these last items are some of the items that we will be able to cover this year. For street maintenance, major item, some safety equipment and a patch truck, $105,000. Here is the Crookshank landfill, $4 million for cleanup. iPads, computer, printer, and computers for building engineering and planning. Parks, the electrical panels for Fraser, Stark, Swarthout, and Pittman. And then completion of phase 1, $200,000. And $240,400 for paving of the parking lot, with $139,000 coming from impact fees. For the youth center, air conditioner, copier, storage unit for next year. This item was covered out of this year's budget. For the sports court, athletic equipment, furniture, and computers. For the library, 8 computers for the children's area and staff. We also have various equipment, furniture, computers, and a shade structure to be funded by asset forfeiture, stone garden, and impact fees, all for the police department. And the major projects, the sports complex at a cost of $5 million, allocation of $5 million for next year, to be funded by all of these various sources: HUD entitlement, Program Inc., CDBG, the 2007 bonds, impact fees, donation. So that's the sports complex. Then we have the parking lot overlay at Buckland Park, $142,000. The Carlos Aguilar Park field lighting for $190,000 out of HUD entitlement and impact. Another major project, a skate park with a grant from the State Department of Parks and Recreation, $2.4 million. The council chambers, this is an estimate, but it's from impact fees, public facilities, approximately $700,000, and then some software and from impact fees, for a total of $14.2 million in capital for general fund activities.
Yeah. Question going back to the fire engine. I understand the financing it over 2 years or 2 fiscal years. Does that mean we can place the order in the first fiscal year? Because you said, I know it takes at least a year, 12, 18 months to get. So would we place the order with the first $200,000 and then continue and pay it off with the second? By
Yes.
then we would be taking delivery of it in our second fiscal year?
Yes,
Okay.
that's the plan.
Okay.
Place the
intention
order.
is, by the time we have the designs done, it would probably be January, February for all the bid documents. And with the award of the contract, it's typically at 50%, and they start with the chassis. There's actually a payment stream that goes with that, and that by spring, hopefully they could have it done. Well, the point is, we get into the next fiscal year, we budget the balance. We expect a $400,000 purchase, and this would replace our 1995 engine. It was a reach. Yes.
With regard to some of our other purchasing, do we participate in collaborative pools for those types of purchases? I know that there's a couple of different agencies
Yes.
out there that assist governmental agencies, cities
Yes.
and counties. Do we
Yes.
leverage that relationship?
We have done it with other equipment. For example, when we purchase vehicles, they call it that we piggyback on somebody else's.
Right. But for example, we're ordering a number of computers, so I'm assuming that we want to standardize the type of a computer that we're getting. Will that all go out in one bid through one of these companies that can maybe join us with a bunch of other companies? And
Dell has us on their government overall. We draw off that same price sheet that they provide to local governments, and we get a really good deal.
okay.
So we buy from Dell on that. There is some discussions about looking at different platforms because of reliability, specifically looking at certain Apple products because they don't require as much maintenance. But those are being handled separately. But the PC ones that we buy through Dell, which gives us they have a government pricing contract out there that we attach to.
Okay. But you're familiar with the name of the company or the agency that contracts on behalf of cities?
Oh, there's California Communities.
Yes.
Yes, and we've used them for other items. For computers, we found that the Dell one gives just as well.
Okay.
We also we look at our police cars that way, and fire engines tend to be a little more specific because, for example, how LA approaches fire is different than what rural areas would approach. They just operate. So what we try to do is attach to those, but we get pretty good pricing. That's why about $400,000 is the estimate. Now, clearly, if one of the other cities in this area were going out at the same time, we'd know about it. The fire chiefs all meet regularly, and we try to coordinate some bids, but that hasn't been the case, mostly because most of them are just not able to buy anything.
Right. Okay.
Next, we had the personnel request. That's request from various divisions for additional personnel, and the total cost of that was $609,300. We had request from the city attorney's office for an additional for an associate city attorney at a cost of $133,000. We had a request from Human Resources for an HR analyst position, the cost being $83,000. For the city managers, we had a request to delete the executive assistant position and then to add a management assistant position at a net cost of $3,000. From engineering and facility maintenance, there was a request for a secretarial assistant, half-time in each division, at a total cost of $52,000. And then facility maintenance, a maintenance worker, a request for at a cost of $54,000. Then for planning, we had a request to eliminate the vacant assistant planner position and add an associate planner position at a net increase in cost of $14,455. We had a request from the fire department to delete 3 vacant firefighter positions and 1 secretarial assistant position and add 1 battalion chief at a difference of negative $175,000. We also had a request to delete 1 vacant library assistant position and add 5 part-time, I believe it's half-time positions, library page positions at a net cost of $8,426. We had a request from a recreations division to add 5 coordinators: exercise, recreation, youth, adult, senior coordinator, and sports court coordinator, at a cost of about from $51,000 to $54,000 for each. And I believe those were all the personnel requests. Now, with regards to another issue with this budget and future budgets, are the challenges. And with those challenges, I had mentioned at the mid-year budget review that there was a need, and there is a need, to determine priorities. While at the same time following our city strategic plan, following our own financial policies, and maintaining a balanced budget. Some of those challenges are, for example, one of the main ones is the MLK Aquatic Center at a cost of up to $11 million. As of today, we still don't have clear direction or a decision from the state as to whether or not we'll be able to use the bond proceeds from the 2011 redevelopment bonds for this project. We are, of course, trying to determine other courses of action and other possibilities so that we can make this project happen. But again, we're still...
I thought that we did get an answer, and the answer was no.
Yes, we did, but we met again with them at a meet and confer session, and we're still waiting. I haven't heard of a decision yet out of that meet and confer session with the state.
And we went through that process. DOF has not responded, which has actually been a couple of weeks now, which is actually a good sign. And secondly, as I mentioned, there is a bill that has already come out of 2 committees bipartisan to extend the ending date, which fixes that problem, and we have the funds. And that also addresses the AB issues that's in our strategic plan. A lot of things get fixed statewide, and it's the bond attorneys and the underwriters who are bringing this pressure, because it's really causing serious impact to the state's ability to borrow money, because you can't change a deal. If you can change a deal, well, then people don't want to loan you money. And that's what this is all about. So we're actually feeling pretty good, but until we see the cash, and if you will, the releases come through, we're not programming it in.
Other challenges is that, as mentioned before, the need to build a new police building, a library building as well. And then we also have 1.1 million still needed to finish the restoration for the Swarthout Park. In addition to that, we have, as mentioned before, we will next year have to budget approximately $200,000 to $260,000 for the second payment for the fire engine. If we move forward, and when we move forward with the construction of the pool, there will be a need for an additional allocation for operations in the amount of $900,000. And then finally, the other thing that we have to, the other issue that we have to take into consideration with next year's, with all budgets from now on, is CalPERS. It continues to increase. As mentioned before, the cost this year was $350,000. And per the actuarial study performed in, I believe, late 2010, early 2011, the projections were that the increase for 15 and 16, fiscal year 15 and 16, was going to be anywhere from 300 to 600,000. Per that letter that we received yesterday, I calculated based on the city's volatility ratio. For miscellaneous, the rate that we pay CalPERS is 9.255. It is based on their estimates going to increase to 19.17%, and safety from 53% to 67%. I'm calculating an additional maybe $1.5 million over the next 5 years. Well, this budget includes a lot of capital, we try to meet a lot of the needs for the divisions and try to meet all these projects. There were some things that are not included. There are some things that are not included in next year's budget. We still have, for example, there was various requests for additional positions that are not included in next year's budget. Requests for additional, for example, the request for additional staff for the sports complex. There was a request for a full-time permanent position. That's not in the budget. However, we will evaluate that request as we get closer to finishing that project. We did, however, allocate an amount for temporary services to be able to staff that project when it opens. There was not included in this budget, while we included $14 million in capital, there is still some other needs out there that were not addressed, that we're not including, and they total $1.8 million. Not included in this budget is a request for funding for IVEDC in the amount of $10 million, which is an increase of 10,000, not 10 million, sorry, which is an increase of 9,000 from the previous contributions. Let's see. However, in summary, this budget includes the construction of the sports complex, the skate park, operational allocations for the sports complex, skate park, splash pad. It includes the completion of phase one repairs for Swarthout Park. It includes $14.2 million for capital related, for general fund operations, which, as you can see, Buckland Park overlay, council chambers construction, fire engine, police department, parking shade structure, electrical panels, various parks, patch truck for the streets department, computers for the libraries, a children's area, Carlos Aguilar parking, field lighting, and finally the OPEB contribution of $600,000 as required. And in summary, we have a balanced budget. Any questions?
Jackson?
I'll just say that you and your staff continue to amaze that no matter what curveballs, such as Crookshank or the state's continuous sticky fingers that keep getting into our money, you've continued to come up with a balanced budget, and certainly a good job on your part and your staff.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
The accrued leave liability represents funding at what percentage? Do we know?
Excuse me? I can't hear.
The accrued leave liability?
The accrued leave liability, we designated out of fund balance, $1 million. The total liability for vacation, sick leave, and comp is 1.9. 1.9.
I thought we had covered that at a higher percentage. No. Okay. The total is 1.9.
1.9. So we have allocated 1 million out of 1.9. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much for a job well done.
Thank you.
See, that practice in here with the people interrupting you paid off.
Well, I think a testament to Letty and in spite of all the financial issues that we have, I think it's much worse in other cities, and I think it's a testament to you, Letty, and to Mr. Duran, and looking into the future and preparing for the future and anticipating, costs and setting money aside for that, and that's where we are today, and we are the most solid financial city in the valley for sure, and much better than a lot of other communities, and it's because of that vision that you guys have to not spend and save and set aside and all those kinds of things that makes our job so much easier. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yes, and I want to compliment the council on staying focused on the strategic plan, because back in 04, actually 5, 6, 7, it could have been very easy to commit to long-term expenditures and not address those liabilities that were there always, because a number of cities just didn't. They said, well, we'll deal with that later. Because of that attention, and then going into a trust situation, which allows us to free up some money, we're able to deal with a state mandate to clear some land that had been out there for 60 years. But by the way, the county has not come up with how they're going to pay for their portion, but that's their issue. But you can see where it's the council staying focused on these long-term issues and spending some money. For example, when that that you had with the Bartel and Associates, to say, tell us what we should be hearing from CalPERS rather than what CalPERS is telling us. And because of that, we adjusted all of our expenditures to follow that plan rather than CalPERS. I've already received 2 calls from the Bay Area, of city managers I know, asking, why aren't we in a panic mode? Because we all talk to each other on listservs and such. And it had to do with about a dozen cities got ahead of this with the Bartel Associates and looked at CalPERS differently. And those cities are going to be okay. But I won't get into the names of the other ones that are called, but they're much larger cities in much more metropolitan areas, and they just got caught.
Well, we had some discussion at the Legislative Action Days when I was up there for the California League of Cities. And the thought is that CalPERS triggered this because the state's economy is doing well, and in light of Prop 30 passing and taking some of the pressure off the general fund, that this was the time that CalPERS needed to make the big splash and say, Houston, we have a problem. We are so underfunded. And instead of doing something rational a little bit at a time, they're just saying, we need it all, we need it quickly. Scary situation. Hey, great job. Great job.
Before you depart from this, the next one, at the next meeting, you'll be receiving the enterprise and specialty funds, and all the special funds that go with that. And then from that, and this information, I'll be developing an actual final budget. So what you're seeing now is only a draft. And I'll be making my recommendations to you on the first meeting of June and requesting a final budget.
Okay, the next item, number 21, discussion and any necessary action regarding to support or oppose various bills of legislation. Mr. Durant.
Yes, the items you have before you is we received a long list of letters from the League of Cities asking for support. So I asked my staff, specifically Ms. Connor, to put together this matrix and get direction from you. We have letters prepared to address a number of these, and I realized it's a lot to look at, but we got them literally last week, and we had the city clerk assisted us getting it onto your agenda at the last minute. So all of these came in a slug. They didn't come in piecemeal. It was all on Wednesday, I think.
Were you through?
If,
Okay.
if if I may. One of the things that the California League of California Cities emphasized was letters of support or letters of opposition are very important because otherwise, without them, they think we acquiesce to whatever the bill is. And so I think that it's important for us to support the league because they do spend a lot of time taking a look at the bills that are in our best interest. And so I personally would like to see us move forward with sending letters of support for those that have been highlighted by the league and sending letters of opposition on the ones that they are recommending that we oppose. Timing is also important. If we see that things have been referred to committee or close to coming up for a hearing date, it's best to have those in sooner rather than later. So I think that to the extent the city manager's office is ready to move forward with these letters, I would like to see us do so.
I wondered that if it was safe to make an assumption that the league recommend a blanket acceptance of their recommendations are good for the city. And you know, I always seem to think that if the league is making a recommendation either against or in favor of a legislation, that they've looked at that, and that by definition means that that direction benefits the city as well. And I'm wondering if that's a safe assumption to make of giving a blanket acceptance of their recommendation.
Yeah, and I certainly understand and appreciate that. We did have an opportunity to sit with staff through a legislative briefing provided by the League of Cities, and they went through the pending legislation and talked us through the upside and downside to each of these bills. And then we had a chance to kind of have a round table, and I don't think that there was any disagreement with the league's position with regard to the bill. Ms. Piedra, you attended that briefing. I don't think that we came up with a single disagreement on any position that the league was advocating.
Okay.
Ms. Viacani, was that your recollection as well?
Yes.
So my motion would be that we direct the city attorney's office to prepare the letters of support or opposition as recommended by the League of Californians and have them signed by the mayor and or the city manager.
Was that a motion?
That's a motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Walker, a second by Mrs. Silva. Please vote.
Motion carried 4-0.
We don't have anything from the assessor agency to the redevelopment agency or the assessors to the housing
Our
agency.
staff will have those ready. Our staff will have those ready. We have them drafted already.
Perfect. Awesome.
We can just tear up the ones we didn't want, so, okay.
We're good to go.
Our office, Grace will be getting those to you, Mayor.
Is there anyone here for public comments? The council will skip its recess and any task force report, or mayor and council members report.
Task force or council members?
Both.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Wanted to express my gratitude to you for attending that Cinco de Mayo celebration last Saturday and giving the outgoing councilor a proclamation. As usual, you did an outstanding job in presenting that, and thank Ms. Walker for attending earlier that evening. Those of you that missed it really missed a terrific performance by the musicians that were brought from Mexico by the Mexican consulate. It was really, attendance was okay, not I would have expected, and I hoped a bit more, but nevertheless it was adequate. Really a fun event. Everyone that walked away. They actually had received a standing ovation from the audience because it was just really first-class performance. I want to congratulate Ms. Walker on her appointment as the second vice president for SCAG. Very proud of you, Cheryl, and you know, it's easy to see how well respected you are in the SCAG leadership, and you know, everybody knows you, everybody appreciates you, and look forward to your presidency hopefully in a couple of years.
Thank you.
SCAG, we're very, very happy to be there and very proud of you.
Thank you.
Mr. Jackson?
No council report, just obviously our task force that I serve on, both actually with Ms. Walker, both seem to come to a head today with our moving forward with the hospital task force as well as our council chambers task force. So I think some exciting times are ahead for us and the city.
I think so.
Cheryl?
Made mention previously of the April 15th briefing that was very well attended with city staff presented by the League of California Cities. And then I had the opportunity to go up to Sacramento and meet with a number of people during Legislative Action Days. Did attend the SCAG General Assembly and brought back the profile for the city of El Centro. This has got so much great information about our area, complete with maps and all kinds of graphs and charts and statistics and everything. And SCAG puts out one of these for every single city within its jurisdiction. And the kind of the funny comment was Hassan Akrata, who is the executive director of SCAG, threatened the cities and said if you don't send in a picture of your city to put on the cover that his face was going to be there. So he said they had 100% compliance and received a picture from everybody. So I'm going to hand this off to the city manager. I had a lot of fun on the 4th, May 4th, because it was Earth Day, like 3 weeks late in Buckland Park, and I appreciate city staff being there and the booth that they did, as well as our Cinco de Mayo celebration just a little bit early. So it was really a great day, and I am just so proud of staff and Mr. Silva and your efforts to bring these events to our community. So thank you.
Thank you.
I too was at the SCAG conference, and once again, it was good to see my friend here getting an opportunity to move up in the world, at least in the SCAG world, that's for sure.
Thank you. I really appreciated having everyone there, and Ms. Piedra was there as well.
Not the,
Yeah, actually, I think we had all 5 members of the Board of Supervisors were there at one time or another, and I believe that we had a representative from every valley city was also in attendance. That's kind of cool.
and if you missed the feast, the good time at the old post office, young man could actually sing. The people that he had in back of him were doing such a great job with harmony. I mean, it was just like they never missed a beat, and they all looked kind of young to me. I was thinking, God dang, where did they get people this young to play this well? Did they look young to you?
Yeah, they were young. And for those of us that know the music that they played, they actually played old romantic Mexican songs from the 50s and 60s. So the kinds of music that my parents listened to, and it was just, it's just reminiscing and thinking about the good old days and my parents, and everyone there kind of had the same feeling about that music. It was just outstanding.
Well, it was funny. I didn't understand a word they were saying, but the music was nice, and they had a lot of harmony, and that's what music is all about, just making you feel at home. Anyway, that's it.
All right. Are we adjourned?
Adjourned.